Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. We're focused on working together and making a difference, and we're featuring a partnership between Virginia Western Community College and Goodwill Industries of the Valleys. This webinar is truly focusing on combining the power and strength of community colleges and local workforce nonprofits to better serve students. A few specific objectives are reviewing the national landscape and trends for courses to employment partnerships, partnerships between community colleges and community-based organizations. We'll identify complementary strategic benefit drivers and roles within partnerships, describe ways to build a strong foundation of trust, explore the interweaving of management processes, data, and tools for continual improvement, and outline the value and impact of building employer and community stakeholder networks. So to introduce us, this webinar is hosted by Achieving the Dream and the Workforce Strategies Initiative at the Aspen Institute. I'm Meredith Hatch from Achieving the Dream, and I'm joined by fellow facilitator Bill Browning from the Workforce Strategies Initiative. Our featured webinar speakers today. So we're so thrilled to be joined by Marilyn Herbert Ashton of Virginia Western Community College, Tara Alatorre from Virginia Western Community College, and Mary Ann Gilmer from Goodwill Industries of the Valleys. Now we'd like to find out a little bit about you. So we have posted a poll that you can respond to. We're interested in finding out what type of organization do you represent. So I see the responses are already coming in, and I'm seeing that we have many types of organizations represented on today's webinar. I'm seeing a lot of community-based nonprofits coming in. Have a number of representatives from community colleges. Fun responding. We have a couple public or philanthropic funders on the webinar today, and some state and local workforce agencies. Quite exciting to see so many of you interested in how community colleges and community-based organizations are really joining together to create some powerful supports for. All right. So we found out a little bit about what types of organizations you're joining us from. Now we'd like to know what region of the country are you from. So please respond to this poll. We have folks from around the country. Seeing many representatives from the Northeast, several from the Northwest. Many of you are from the Midwestern part of the country. This is excellent. Okay, great. So last getting to know you question. Please describe your level of engagement in a community college, community-based organization partnership. So we're interested in knowing if you're currently engaged in a community college, community-based organization partnership, if you're not currently engaged, or if this is not really your job focus. I'd like to see what's motivating you to learn a little bit more about these partnerships today. We're seeing the majority of you are currently engaged in this type of a partnership, a community-based organization, community. Some of you are not engaged. You may be interested in doing this. And some of you have, a different job focus. Ooh, I see that some of you are doing research on the topic too. Or working with a local education agency. The results coming in. Yep, so we're seeing a large majority are currently engaged in this type of a partnership. Now I'm going to pass it over to Bill Browning to ask a special question about the growth of this type of a partnership. Bill?
Thanks, Meredith. Hi, this is Bill Browning with Aspen. So this last one is a special bonus question, and we just want you to make a guess as to whether you think the field of these kind of partnerships have grown a lot or a little or not really much at all in the past 5 years up to 2003. So this is really one you can just take your best guess at, or you can click on I have no idea, which is another option at the bottom of it. So the results are coming in, and it looks like it's neck and neck between grew by 25 and 50% and field doubled in size, and it looks like the top choice was grew by 25 to 50% with the field doubling in size as the next one. So I'm going to click through and show you the answer. So here was the answer. It came from a survey that Aspen did in 2003, and we estimated from this national survey of these kinds of partnerships that the field roughly doubled from the years, in the 5 years from 2008 to 2013. So those of you that, about a third of you guessed that, you guessed correctly, and congratulations on that. So what we did was we surveyed about 177, we got 177 responses from community-based organizations, and close to half of them we also got their community college to also respond so that we were able to get data from both sides of the partnership. And over half of them did not exist in 2008, 5 years prior to that. So you can see in the chart here how the field looks to have grown or about doubled in size just from that sample over those 5 years. So we're going to show a little bit more data on from this survey. So this is what the partnerships from this survey looked like in 2008. So you can see the spread of them geographically and the number of them. And then look at it in 2013. So you can see and get a feel for how it's grown by looking at those yellow dots in a lot more places, and it's a lot more filled in over most of the country. So this was all part of this Courses to Employment survey. Courses to Employment is the term that we use to refer to these kinds of integrated partnerships between community colleges and community-based organizations. This survey in 2013 was the last piece of work on our Courses to Employment demonstration project, which spanned these 5 years, and we studied in depth 6 of these partnerships over the first 3 years of this, and we published an awful lot of really great case studies that this latest partnership between Virginia Western and Goodwill has added to. So you can see all of these on our CoursesToEmployment.org website. So let's look into the field of practice a little bit more before we dive into our case study. So one of the questions we asked on the survey was the benefits for colleges and the benefits for community-based organizations. So this is the responses you see on the pyramids. The higher placement indicates we had a larger number of people who responded to say that these were the benefits. So if you want to look on the community-based organization side, so that would be the left-hand side of this, you'll see several benefits. And some of these are reflected in the partnership that we're going to hear about. In particular, the higher quality and training credentials was a goal that Goodwill sought in its partnership with Virginia Western Community College, along with higher pay for jobs associated with the training. And the other response is better education employment outcomes, better meet businesses' needs, and new resources that CBOs could tap into that were more accessible on the college side. Those new resources were also another benefit on the college side. So if you look at the right-hand side, the college benefits, so these were respondents to the surveys that were from community colleges. These were the benefits that they said they were interested in. And the largest one was the ability to reach and serve new audiences that colleges couldn't reach too well themselves, but that CBOs or community-based organizations already had access to. And that was true in this case study, as was the number 2 response, which was to access support services that nonprofits deliver in a strong way every day that community colleges don't often deliver quite as much. You'll also hear in our case study some different strategic benefits that they were looking for when we get to that point in our show today. So those were the benefits that we heard in the survey from both the college and the Goodwill perspective. And we also asked who did what? Who took the lead with what activities? So within this field of study from the survey, we can see where the CBO or the community-based organization took the lead. That would be in this cog right here. We'll see where the college took the lead, mainly in education and training delivery in the second cog. The CBOs most often took the lead with support services and job placement services, while the colleges were more the delivery arm or the training arm. And we also we'll see in our case study, how one of the findings was that the strategic benefits sought by one of the partners that they could use some help with, that they wanted to build a stronger capability, they found those exact capabilities in the partner on the other side, so that they meshed, as these gears meshed, they meshed very well. There's also a lot of shared processes between the two partners, just as you'll see in this case study. Often curriculum design is a shared process, and financing. Both partners in most of these draw on either side for resources that either of the partners have greater access to. So that's a little bit about how the field meshes their capabilities to create value for both employers and participants. But we also asked them about challenges. So as you all probably know who are out there running partnerships, that they aren't the easiest things in the world to do, and they come with their own set of challenges. So in the survey, we heard about two different types of challenges. One on the left is financial challenges. And many of you probably have dealt with government funding cuts. Both Workforce Investment Act and state governments in most states have cut funding for workforce and community colleges, and that's been an ongoing challenge for individual organizations and partnerships as well. Sustaining funding is another challenge, and we'll hear a little bit about how these two partners are dealing with sustaining a partnership that was started with a large time-limited federal grant. So we'll learn a little bit about how they're sustaining their partnership. Then on the right, we've got operational challenges, and we've got challenges, many challenges in the data side. So collecting data from both students and employers is a challenge for both. That probably many of you all have that are doing this kind of work. And sharing the data between organizations can sometimes be a challenge, but these two partners were able to figure out ways to do that. The other big challenge is how to mesh organizational boundaries and cultures when the two organizations are very different. Their operating environments and their operating considerations are often a contrast, a study in contrast, and they're measured on different performance measures for their funding. So these are some of the challenges that partnerships have to balance, according to our study. So all of this is on this recommended resource. So it's www.coursesToEmployment.org. You can see the full report on the survey. There's lots more there. You can see a bunch of these Courses to Employment partnership reports, including the Virginia Western Goodwill Partnership Report. And you can see a video with practitioners and students explaining how these partnerships work and how they benefit organizations and students. So what we'd like to do now for the next minute or two is to meet some students that have benefited from these partnerships. So here is a video with some clips of students in Texas and Northern Virginia who have experienced these partnerships.
Without Training Future, I won't be able to be in this, in phlebotomy class or even in my nursing classes. I think without their help, I'll be still in the Chinese carry-out.
I think I needed someone to say, you know what, you're worthy. You're worthy of more than what you put yourself into. And for me, that was it.
Coming from my standpoint, a migrant farm worker, to become an X-ray tech, and then you're used to making $20,000 a year to making 40, 50, or 60. I mean, it's a big difference.
I was the first person in my family to go to college, and so just the idea that there was something better out there. I had heard stories, but didn't think that it was something that was possible for me or my family.
We wanted to bring in the student voice just to illustrate the kind of students that these partnerships attract. They're often students with tremendous assets, but they're also students that may have challenges that can go beyond the resources of one organization, and that's one of the benefits of these kinds of Courses to Employment partnerships that we're going to explore through a case study today. So now that we've taken a look at sort of the broader field of practice, I'd like to dive into today's case study with Virginia Western Community College and Goodwill Industries of the Valleys. What you're going to hear today is drawn from an Aspen Achieving the Dream publication called Working Together and Making a Difference, and that was published just a month or two ago. And this was the first of our Courses to Employment publications that focused on a newer partnership rather than a mature partnership. So we've been able to capture through this story the dynamics of what both organizations went through to start a brand new training program jointly together and how to build it out over the first few years of their partnership. So we're going to try and make that story come alive today. And I'm going to reintroduce Marilyn Herbert Ashton from Virginia Western, and her role is in grants and strategic management there at the college. Also with Marilyn is Tara Alatorre with Virginia Western. She's the program director of the partnership program that we're focusing on today. It was a Microsoft Office specialist program with an emphasis on healthcare administrative jobs that the two organizations worked on together, and Tara directed that grant-funded program. And we also have Marianne Gilmer with Goodwill Industries of the Valley. Marianne is Vice President of Workforce Development and oversaw the partnership and oversees all of their workforce services. So we're really thrilled, as Meredith mentioned, to have our guest speakers here today. So the first area that we're going to talk about is around strategic vision. So what you're going to see on the screen in the next few slides are charts drawn right from the publication that I mentioned just a moment ago. And this one in particular on strategic vision really describes a finding that we learned through this, or we reaffirmed through this case study, that some of the specific goals and benefits that both organizations, each of the organizations sought, were matched by assets and capabilities from their partner. So strategic benefit or goals, another way of saying it, is a capability that they want to develop in a stronger way. And every college and every nonprofit has a strategic choice to either build those kind of capacities internally within their own organization or to acquire them through a partnership. And we are encouraging folks to really think about partnerships for filling in some of this strategic vision and acquiring these capacities. So we're going to hear first from Marilyn, and she's going to talk about the college side of the strategic benefits and goals that Virginia Western was looking for. So you see there some of the benefits and goals and how it was matched by assets on the Goodwill side. So Marilyn, I'm going to ask a question of you and then follow up with a question of Marianne from Goodwill. So Virginia Western is a pretty sizable college. You have a lot of internal capacities. Why not just do this yourself? Why partner with Goodwill to deliver this training program?
Oh, well, thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you. Well, at Virginia Western, we are the largest single campus community college in Virginia of the 23 community colleges, and we're landlocked, so we don't have a lot of space. So one of our challenges is we frankly ran out of space, and we needed another location to offer some of our programs. And we also have a community where we have an underserved population with dislocated workers, an older adult population, and frankly, coming to the community college is a scary place. So in order to better meet the needs of this population, working with Goodwill was really the perfect solution to that, because Goodwill has the space to offer programming. They work with this population, and it created an opportunity really to have students really access a community college setting, albeit off-site, and have the potential to come back on campus to take further courses or to expand their educational opportunities. It also created the opportunity to enhance success. The big focus now in community colleges, of course, is certainly access and having open doors, but once the students enter our doors, how do we ensure that they're successful? And with our underserved population in particular, these individuals really need additional, we use the term wraparound services, or having a guide by the side to support them throughout their progress. So Goodwill provided that opportunity and has those services which we don't have at our college.
Thanks, Marilyn, for sort of making this static chart come alive. And let's hear from Marianne Gilmer on the other side. Marianne is with Goodwill Industries of the Valley. Marianne, your organization has pretty extensive workforce development services covering all of Western Virginia. You're a very large workforce development provider on your own. Why did you choose to partner with the college rather than to build these capacities yourself?
Well, thanks, Bill, and good afternoon to everyone who's on the webinar. As Bill mentioned, we are sizable in terms of the geographic area that we cover. It's a 31 county, 13 city area, but our hub is here in Roanoke, Virginia, and that's where we serve about 15,000 job seekers annually who come in. Primarily these folks are low income, and some of them face other barriers to success as well. We serve a lot of folks who are reentering after incarceration, as Meredith mentioned, some older workers, and just a wide variety of people who face some needs in getting back out into the labor market. What we didn't have that was really what has been so incredibly valuable that Virginia Western has brought to us is really the opportunity to provide the industry-recognized credentials in locally in-demand occupations to help these folks get jobs that are more than minimum wage jobs, that are paying self-sustaining wages in the community. And so because we did have the space available and we had a long-standing interaction and partnership with Virginia Western, it seemed like a natural fit that they would be able to offer some classes here at our Goodwill Jobs campus in Roanoke. I would add that for the folks in our community, most of whom are very low income, it's quite difficult for them to think about and intimidating for them to think about walking onto a community college campus. So despite our encouragement to do so, many of them just did not do that. But having the program available here in their community and them having a long-standing relationship with Goodwill really, I think, increased the odds of folks walking in the door and accessing training that they need to be self-sufficient when they go to work. And the results, I think, have really demonstrated the value of the partnership to Goodwill. Prior to Virginia Western coming on board, we did just offer primarily job placement services and would send folks to the college to get training. Now, when we look at our participants who don't complete training courses, they're making around $9.78 an hour. And when we look at those who go through the programs offered here by Virginia Western Community College, they're earning well over $3 an hour more and entering more middle-skilled jobs than ever before. So the partnership truly has helped us achieve our strategic vision of helping people achieve independence through work.
Wow, thanks, Marianne. So you guys are already seeing results on the ground, both to benefit your organization and the participants that you serve to sort of begin fulfilling your strategic vision. Before I ask Marilyn that same kind of question, we've got a couple that have come through, questions that have come through. So one question was, how formal must be one of these partnerships to have been recognized on that map that we saw earlier? So the survey that we administered did define these partnerships to be more integrated partnerships. You can look on the survey report to look at a more nuanced definition. But we were looking for partners that were operationally integrated in some ways, and those could be partnerships that have a formal agreement or contract, or that have a little bit less formal contract where no money's changing hands. So there are lots of variations of formality, but we were looking for partners that were doing more than just referring a few people to one another, and lighter forms of partnerships. So another question that came up is around the types of credentials that the programs offered. And we are going to be hitting that, so I'm going to ask Tara to speak to that a little bit later in the program. So another question that came in that Marianne, perhaps you can answer is, what's the typical minimum wage, or what is the minimum wage in Virginia normally?
It's $7.25 per hour.
$7.25 an hour, so that compares to $9 and something for people that you place without training, and then I believe it was $13 or so an hour for people that had gone through training at Virginia Western, various programs. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, it's almost $14 an hour. It's $13.97.
So it's close to twice as much as the local minimum wage in Virginia. Wow. So Marilyn, we just heard a little bit from Marianne, not only about their strategic vision in starting the partnership, but some of the results that they're seeing after the first 2 or 3 years. Can you sort of return to the strategic benefits that Virginia Western was seeking, and tell me what kind of progress are you seeing towards that 3 years in?
So one of our challenges was we really wanted to expand our program offerings to the underserved population, the dislocated workers, the unemployed, and having the opportunity to provide training out at Goodwill, we've been able to do that. We've been able to expand our program offerings. One of the programs we offered through the grant was Microsoft Office training, and completing that program actually provides we like to use the term portable, stackable credential that can be used in other career pathways, and in this case, in the healthcare field, which I know Tara's going to talk about that a little bit later. But also, it provided the support that these students really needed. You know, support such as childcare, transportation, funding for tuition, you know, all of those challenges and barriers that these students face. It also gave us the opportunity to provide training to a more diverse population. In addition to having some older students, and I think the average age of our students in our program is about 43 years old, it also provided the opportunity for more diverse cultures to participate as well. In addition, we now have another opportunity to provide training at another location. And for individuals that may be afraid to come onto a college campus, you know, the fear that if I come to the college, it's scary, I'm not going to be successful, where if they go to a safe place like Goodwill, they have the opportunity to succeed and move to the next level, which could be to continue their education or to seek employment. And we're seeing with some of our outcomes that our graduates actually have the opportunity to have internship opportunities with our area healthcare agencies and then seek employment.
Thank you, Marilyn. So there's a question that's come in, Marilyn, for you while you were speaking, and the question is this: Did you have to pay for the training space at Goodwill?
That's a really good question. Well, part of our fabulous relationship with Goodwill, and I can't stress that enough, is it's been an in-kind expense from Goodwill. They've donated the space to us throughout the training program, and we've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to have that space.
Okay. Thank you. And Marianne, before everybody starts dashing out to get free space at Goodwill, can you just explain a little bit more about that decision? Why did you make that a gift in kind to Virginia Western?
Well, you know, before people accuse us of being way too altruistic, I would say that we did have some vacant warehouse space where we had some commercial services contracts in the past, and a lot of those had been sort of taken to a point where we were doing work for companies at their location as opposed to our location. So we did have some vacant warehouse space, but then as we've moved on in the partnership, we've seen the incredible value and the mission advancement that we've been able to accomplish through the partnership. And so now as we look at what we do with space here at our Goodwill, it's always at the top of mind, I guess, for us to consider, are there other training programs? And in fact, we did just build out some additional space and some additional training labs. And we have funders who help us with that for sure, and we have our regular Goodwill dollars, but we get such a return on the investment in terms of the benefit to the people we serve. And so I think that leadership of the college and our leader both understand the importance of elevating everyone in the community's opportunity to be self-sufficient. And so our leader, our CEO, was on board with using our space for this really great purpose.
Great. And another question has been chatted in. You guys are chatting in great questions. Keep them coming. And this one, Marianne, is for you. So I know that being familiar with Roanoke, that the location at Goodwill where you have the joint training programs is in an underserved community, but the question came through around transportation and whether you guys had to work through anything given the neighborhood that you're in. If you could address that real quickly.
Well, we really did provide some supportive assistance for those individuals who needed transportation support to get back and forth to class. So that in some cases meant doing things like paying for bus passes. It also might mean for folks who had a car but couldn't afford to put the gas in it, that Goodwill brought to the table the ability to pay some mileage reimbursement through our WIA, at that time WIA contract. And we're doing the same thing now, just doing that with Goodwill dollars, mission dollars. So we were able to address that. That's part of the beauty of the partnership, I think, is that CBOs in the community are typically very used to the need to provide those wraparound supports. And if they can't do it, they know who can. So I think we were more than happy to provide that support to those who needed it.
Great. Thanks, Marianne. So we're going to move on to the next slide here. And the next slide, before we start into talking about trust, we want to have a quick poll. So if you guys could answer this question about how important you think trust is to the success of a partnership. So you can put in your answers. As soon as you put in your answer, you can see the results rolling up on there, and there's several options of absolutely essential, pretty important, not as important as others, or not really thought about it. So the answers are coming in, and if you hadn't put in your results, this is a landslide. We've got about 94% of you all believe that trust is absolutely essential. So I take it from that is that you believe that trust is among the top most important factors in a partnership. So that's an interesting finding by itself. And when we went and studied the partnership, we heard a lot about building trust. So one of the findings in this case study was that trust is this unseen force that seems to form a foundation of a successful partnership. And we saw evidence of it in interviews that we did at all levels, from both of the chief executive officers to senior managers to program delivery staff. We saw that trust delivered, reflected all the way down in both organizations, and we saw it built into the dynamics of the training program as well. So what you have here is a chart around the early time frame of the partnership, which is prior to the two organizations teaming together on a federal Department of Labor Trade Adjustment Assistance Grant. So just so that you know, this partnership, a lot of the founding dollars were provided under a TACT or Trade Adjustment Assistance grants from Department of Labor. That Northern Virginia Community College was the consortium lead, and Virginia Western and Goodwill operated one of the 7 sites within this consortium. So what this early era shows here, this chart, is how the two organizations interacted with one another prior to receiving that grant. And so as we talk about this issue of trust, I'm going to ask this question of Marilyn. Your president, President Robert Sandel, made the decision that he wanted to partner with Goodwill, which included sharing some of the revenues from the grant over on the Goodwill side, which is not an easy decision sometimes for leaders to make. Why did President Sandel choose to partner with Goodwill? What was it he saw in this relationship, Marilyn?
Well, our president is a firm believer in collaboration and relationships, and he firmly believes that as part of the mission of our community college to be successful and to enhance student success, we have to collaborate with other organizations. And he's very active and very involved in our community, and he's quite well known in our community. And back in about 2001, when President Sandel came to the college, he actively got involved with the Goodwill board. So that was his first experience with Goodwill. Obviously knew Bruce Phipps, who's the CEO of Goodwill, and instilled, in his philosophy with us at the college, the importance of collaboration and relationships. And I can tell you from the grants office, which really it was under his leadership that the college has a grants office, he always instilled the importance of, in order to be successful with a grant, you have to be able to have a good relationship in place and be collaborative. And a lot of the grants today, for those of you that are searching to find funding for partnerships, the key to success, frankly, in a grant application is you must be able to collaborate. So you can see through the timeline that it began in the early 2000s, and during the course of that time, I know our grant office and Goodwill's grant office and other community agencies got together to just talk about how can we work together, how can we collaborate, and our workforce department at the same time was also working with Goodwill, talking about those possibilities. And you can see in 2009 and then again in early 2012, there was some joint training projects which received some external funding, and there was success to that. So that relationship was there. And we always, looked at the possibilities, and we kept trying. And, many of you out there know it takes time, patience, and persistence. So then in early 2012, the president received a phone call from the president of Northern Virginia Community College, Dr. Robert Templin, asking if Virginia Western would be interested in collaborating in this grant project with Northern Virginia Community College. And I just want to share with all of you that we had 30 days to put this proposal together for Virginia Western. And we needed to ensure that we had a program, a location, we needed to ensure that there would be students. And so, of course, the president said, absolutely, we will participate in this grant. And then the very next phone call, quite frankly, was to Goodwill to say, here's this opportunity, do you want to partner, do you want to collaborate? And without hesitation, without a blink, the answer was yes. And, as they say, the rest is history, and off we went. I do want to share with everybody, though, that the grant was awarded, and with our particular program, we started a Microsoft Office training program, and we looked at Northern Virginia's Microsoft Office training program as a best practice and tweaked it a little bit to make it more identifiable for our community. And we took really 6 months to plan and prepare to roll out this program. And I think a lot of you know you can never plan enough. And as well as we did plan, of course, there were some challenges, and we'll touch upon that a little bit later in this webinar. But that's really how it started, and the trust was there with both leaders. They both have a great relationship, very focused on the community, and really the success of the citizens in our community and getting them employed.
Thanks, Marilyn. Yeah, we were really struck when we went and did our site interviews for the case study about the extent to which those personal relationships that you spoke about laid the foundation and the readiness for a very quick-hitting organizational partnership when the grant opportunity came. So those investing in those organizations, even before those opportunities come in, can be really important. So let's talk about the phase of building trust and the operations and planning for this. Marilyn mentioned that there was a ramp-up time after getting the grant. So you see the next two eras of this partnership under the grant was a planning era for about 9 months of trying to do all the things that you need to do to start a brand new program on curriculum and equipment and staffing and recruitment. And then an operations era, which started with the first cohort in fall of 2013, and we studied it through the third cohort or into the fourth cohort in 2015. So that's what you're seeing there. And I'm going to bring Tara in, who was program director. And Tara, as you moved into the joint operations phase of a brand new training program with this Microsoft Office training, but you had high external performance commitments already embedded within the grant, how did you know you could trust your counterparts in an entirely different organization to deliver, Tara?
Hi, thanks everybody for having me here today. I would like to say, first of all, I think that trust is foundational in every relationship. It was foundational in our relationship with our Goodwill counterparts, foundational in our relationship with our students, our employers, all of our stakeholders. Trust is very foundational. And on my level, how did I know that I could trust my counterpart and the other organization to deliver? My counterpart, her name is Alicia, and we both had a common goal, and that was basically to see the students succeed at whatever cost, that we could help assist with. So one, we had a passion for that student. And I think for Alicia and for I, whatever I asked Alicia to do, she would do. Whatever she asked me to do, I would do. There was never a question as whether or not Alicia had done something or I had done something, so there was follow-through. There was intentional efforts to work together to help the students. We were very open and honest with each other at all times, and sometimes there can be difficult conversations in there, and we were able to have those and to grow from those conversations in a way that would benefit the students and our relationship and just grow that. I liked at our one of our conferences here in Roanoke with the C2C here that somebody said that you find a way to say yes, and I think that really is the bottom line. Anything that I asked of Goodwill, Mary Ann, I know at one point when we first started the program, actually the internet connection here was not strong enough to support the web-based programs that we were using in our training, and so Goodwill upgraded that internet access, and that was a pretty costly upgrade for them, and they did that without question as quickly as they could. So I guess delivery, whatever I asked, they would just deliver, and vice versa. And the intentional effort to work together through any situations that might arise because we had the same purpose, the same goals.
Thanks, Tara. So before switching over to Mary Ann to ask a similar question, just a quick comment. In our interviews with people on both sides of the college, we were really struck that they define trust in similar ways. So you guys can get out your paper and pencil and write this definition down. It's not a formal definition, but it seemed to work really well here. And what we heard from multiple people was really the same definition, was when they said they were going to do something, they did it. And so I knew I could trust them to do it, to follow through. So it was really having that follow through. So Mary Ann, you were also getting in a long-term agreement with the college. This wasn't a temporary alliance that you could get in and out of quickly. What made you decide to invest? What was there in the trust between the two organizations that made you decide that you could count on Virginia Western, knowing colleges sometimes aren't known for delivering new programs very quickly? It's a slower moving animal than nonprofits. So tell us about it.
Sure. Well, I think we were fortunate in that we had a history with Virginia Western, and Meredith touched on this a bit, that it wasn't something that was new in terms of working with them. It was just a larger undertaking than we had previously done. But we have worked on projects and started really with things that were transactional in nature, and then moved toward Virginia Western having a class out here, but we didn't really support it, and in terms of providing wraparound supports or anything like that. And so I think over time the partnership got a little deeper, we tested the waters more and more on both sides and realized, hey, we've got, a common mission, common vision for what we can accomplish here together. And if you keep that mission in front of you, and I'll say this about Tara Alatori, and she mentioned her counterpart at Goodwill, Leisha, they kept the mission in front of them all the time, and that kept them saying, yes, I will help out in any way I can. I believe our leaders inspired us to trust each other because they made it okay for us to not be territorial. They made it okay for us to look for solutions together. And as Tara mentioned, in some cases it meant that we might have to make an investment in infrastructure and things like that. They made that okay. And so that went a long way toward establishing trust with each other. I guess the final thing I would say about that, too, is we did use some tools, and speak about this a little more later, I know, but some tools to define roles, responsibilities, accountability, and by using those tools to say, here are some ways for the front line to tell who's responsible for what. And sometimes it was individual, either the college or Goodwill. Sometimes it was both parties, but there was never really any question about who was ultimately accountable. And I think that helped prevent a lot of the issues we sometimes have on the front line with people getting territorial about their roles and things of that nature.
So, Mary Ann, if I could put you on the spot a little bit around this trust issue. It hasn't always been easy. Every relationship is tested. And you all had a test after a couple of cohorts. It's a new program, and trying to recruit people for a program that doesn't have a reputation isn't that easy to begin with. And you guys were a couple of cohorts in, and the recruiting numbers were still coming in low. So you had a moment of truth that this trust was being tested, and we all know that can rip us apart or bring us together. Can you tell us a little bit about this test, what it was, and what you guys ended up doing?
Sure. Well, absolutely. We were struggling, and I know that Tara was frustrated because we weren't recruiting the people into the program that we needed to in time for them to, go through the process and get enrolled into the program. And just the numbers were low, and we were very concerned about that from both sides, I think, Western and Goodwill. But then I think one thing that helped us was, first of all, return back to, again, those roles and responsibilities, and have it be reinforced that, okay, recruitment is everybody's responsibility. And so we all have to work together to solve this problem. It's not just Virginia Western's responsibility to get people into the program. And then the second piece was just to say, we're hitting a snag. A lot of our people in the program were funded through the Workforce Investment Act, and we held that contract at that time. And anybody who's dealt with those programs knows the eligibility and things of that nature can sometimes take quite a while. And so what we found was we were, in a way, the bottleneck through trying to get people through that process. And so we stepped up, and Leisha said, hey, I will take responsibility for personally working these people through the process in a timely way and getting them enrolled into the program. But, we were, before we had that sort of sit down and review of accountability, it was a tension point in the relationship for sure, but once we were able to work out a common solution, then I think things went much more smoothly. The process was much quicker, and the recruitment numbers went way up.
So you guys essentially took these separate processes. One was a recruiting process for the program, and the other was the onboarding process for the Workforce Investment Act training support, and you essentially took those two processes and streamlined them into one continuous process. Did I get that about right, Mary Ann?
Yes.
Great. So that answers one of the questions that one of our friends in Colorado was asking about systems changes, about how grants can sometimes result in systems changes. that can have long-term effects. And we'll get back to some additional systems change questions. And Jolene, if that didn't answer your question around WIA support for the training, then come back with another question. We're going to move on to the next topic. And the next topic is on organizational roles, who did what. And we're going to pick up the pace just a little bit starting at this point on organizational roles. So the chart here breaks down the roles where Virginia Western took the lead, and you can see the areas where they took the lead, where Goodwill took the lead, the things that they shared joint accountability for, and the separate processes that they never did merge. So I'm going to ask any of our speakers here, who can tell us perhaps either Tara or Mary Ann, how was it you first determined who took the lead with what process? How did you make those decisions?
This is Mary Ann.
Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Okay. Well, first of all, it was in this particular initiative pretty clearly defined in the logic model that was used for the grant application and for the program implementation. So that on a high level defined roles and responsibilities, and then as I mentioned, we drilled that down to a staffing checklist. That was a tool we got from a partnership with Goodwill International and the American Association of Community Colleges, and that checklist was very helpful because it clearly defined again which staff member was responsible for which function, and it flowed directly out of the logic model.
Great, thanks, Mary Ann. And Tara, I'm going to bounce this one to you. As you guys have moved forward in this process of working together in these roles, how do you assess what's working and what's not? What's the process you use for taking a look at outcomes and processes and how well they're working and how to change them?
Well, I think a lot of it is, well, we do have some evaluation techniques in place. So I listen to the students. Obviously, and I listen to our employers. If our employers, and then our employers are highly engaged, which we'll hear about later on, but our employers, when they see the students and when they hire them, they give us a lot of feedback on that, how prepared they are for that job. So listening to the employer in that respect definitely allows us the ability to analyze how well we're doing, what's working and what's not. We have frequent employer advisory committee meetings where we discuss these things as well as the curriculum and new trends and the new needs of the industry. And we listen to our partners and what's working and what's not. So all those involved, the students, the partners, and the employers, constant communication with them, and really helps us define what's working and what's not.
And I also know that with this grant, you guys are accountable for some specific data outcomes that were part of the grant commitment from the beginning. And I want to zero in, Tara, if I can, on certifications attainment and employment. Can you just tell us a little bit, give us a couple of quick highlights around the trends you've seen in attaining certifications and how you've used that data to make decisions about the program together?
Well, the program has evolved, but initially we started out with Microsoft Office training and credentialing with specifically 2010 Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. It seemed, and we were taking students across the spectrum on the way of computer skills. So, for instance, one of the students that we had in the program early on, was scared to move the mouse and didn't know really how to turn the computer on. So she really lacked some computer skills, where others had used the Office software in previous employment that they've had. And so that was kind of challenging, but, although my goal for them was to have a certification, I really wanted them to have an employable skill, so I thought that at least something was better than nothing in some cases. But we did see in the Word certifications about a 50%, 60% pass rate in that. Excel was probably 40%, and PowerPoint was very fun and engaging, and so the students did really well on that. We saw about an 85 or 90% pass rate with PowerPoint. Employment-wise, it was a challenge to help people find employment when they came out of the training because we weren't really training them for, I guess, to be a nurse or, a manager. We were really training them for the entry-level type positions. And without experience, a lot of healthcare providers want you to have some type of experience in the office. That was a challenge, and that's where I think it was really important to have those relationships with your employers and to have them invested in what you're doing to at least give that student an opportunity to interview for that job or intern for that job. So I, was really pleased with our employment outcomes. We sit somewhere around 80–85% right now in our employment, and each cohort that has gotten stronger with our employer partners. Each cohort, we've had more and more employer partners hiring the students, so that's a pretty good success.
And that's actually a great transition to our next topic, which are building out stakeholder relationships. So as those of you out there who have run job training programs know, there is a network of stakeholder relationships that you need to succeed, both people out there, organizations out there that refer students into the program, as well as employers that you're placing people at, like Tara had just mentioned. So what you see on the screen here is also from our publication, and this was a stakeholder map in August 2013 that was drawn by the program manager, the program director responsible for this at the time in 2013 at Virginia Western. And note here that you've got Goodwill and Virginia Western working together. Each have their assets that they're combining. Only one employer, and that employer they've got just a letter of support with. This is a brand new program that they're launching in Roanoke. And then, of course, Goodwill with their WIA connections also. So keep that picture in your head sort of here, and we are going to fast forward to 2015. And we're going to take a look at the stakeholder network in 2015. And you can see there are a lot more stakeholders that are connected with this program. Goodwill and Virginia Western overlap to a greater degree, as you can see in the middle. And look at all of the employers that are coming in through their employer advisory committee down here. So you've got Carillon, the large, Carillion, the large hospital, but a whole bunch of other employers as well that came through that. And then you've got additional recruiting sources here from Virginia Western to complement what was going on at Goodwill and how the two organizations teamed there. So those two contrasting stakeholder maps sort of lead to a question here. And I'm going to ask Tara to stay with us here. Tell us about, in particular, this Employer Advisory Committee we see at the bottom there. And tell us about how you built out the employer relationships and how you saw those benefits translating into the program.
Well, that's kind of a funny story. It wasn't funny at the time, but it is maybe a little bit now. But so the letter of support that you talk about from Carillion, that when I got hired into this position was the only connection I had to Carillion, was the person who wrote that. So I was finally able to connect with her, and I went to meet with her for the first time, and I was really, really excited about the program, and was ready to go, and super excited about the training, and partnering with them, and I had stars in my eyes. I was so happy, and I remember she looked at the letter and reviewed it, and she said, "Oh, I don't remember writing this," and all of a sudden, like, the stars just diminished. I was like, "Oh my God, no!" She doesn't remember how that she wrote this letter. Apparently, this the length of time that had lapsed from the time that she wrote the letter to the time that I sat in her office was about a year, and so anyhow, that actually, our largest employer, our employer partner on this grant, did not remember writing the letter of support, so certainly it was challenging. However, from that meeting, she did introduce me to a couple of recruiters that would recruit for these types of positions, and I was able to build and foster relationships through those connections. I was encouraged by the lead on the grant to start an employer advisory committee, one that I was kind of reluctant to do just because that was a little bit outside of my box of reaching out to employers. But I did, and I had some people here at Goodwill that had connections in place that were able to connect me with healthcare employers and co-workers that had connections. And from there, things just kind of built, and we ended up with an advisory committee of probably about 10 or 12 different employer parties, also with Goodwill and some Virginia Western career coaches. And that really started us on our way. We were able to, discuss the curriculum, the program, the grant. I got the employers engaged. We had a very open and honest communication at all of our meetings, and really come to find out they really wanted to be engaged. They just hadn't had an opportunity to be engaged. And so we were able to do a lot of job shadowing and mock interviews for every cohort. They really enjoyed that. The job shadowing has developed each cohort to be more and more detailed and expand across different departments. We were able to do internships, and those have grown. We currently have 6 internships right now with 2 different employer partners, and those are funded by our Goodwill partner and those wraparound services that you hear about. Goodwill also provided space for our employers to come out. They wanted to do recruiting here, and so it was a really beneficial relationship that added to the outcomes of our program and really supported those outcomes and enabled us to help the students find employment. I have a manager that I work with real closely at Carillion, and to get from the application, where they get probably 200-300 applications for every posting, to the recruiter, to the manager is almost impossible. But I could send referrals over, and she would pass them up to the manager. And the manager had told me probably about halfway into our nurturing relationship that before our program, that she would not consider anybody without office experience, healthcare experience. But now, because of our program, and when I send somebody over, she knows that that's a really worthy candidate to look at, and so she will interview them, and she's hired a couple of our students. So it's been a very valuable relationship, and it wasn't easy to build, but I think that you just need to, again, be honest with each other, and your employers have to trust you, and then that just really helps deepen and grow those relationships.
So a quick question before I ask Mary Ann around building out stakeholder relationships on the referral side. A quick question, Tara, for you that's coming in from a friend in Texas. And the friend asked about employers. Did employers change any of the way they did their hiring as a result of this program? You gave one example of how a personal relationship has sort of created or fostered a tighter connection for hiring. Have you noticed any other ways that employers have engaged differently in the program since you started building out this relationship?
I think that it's they're eager to they want to know when the next mock interviews are. Mock interview. Oh well, I tell you, here's a good example. I do mock interviews for every class, and our employers take turns participating in that fashion, and actually some of those have led to employment later on. When a student has applied for their organization, I can say, well, hey, do you remember so-and-so? They were in that mock interview, and that kind of, brings them to their memory, and a lot of times they will consider them. But I actually had another employer who reached out to me who knew that she was going to be taking on 12 new employees, and she asked me if she could come and do her own mock interviews with my class, and as a way to pre-screen potential candidates for upcoming employment. So that was a new something that hadn't happened before, was that they contacted me to do the mock interviews.
Well, you've come a long way when the employers are calling you rather than you always making the calls, huh? That's a sign of success right there.
I'll take that any day.
So I'm going to shift it over to Goodwill and Mary Ann, and as you talk about how you guys have built out your stakeholder relationships on the recruiting side, if you could also speak to a question that's come in around how you might have tapped into other nonprofits that have clients to refer. So Mary Ann?
Sure. Well, I think, were fortunate that the program enabled us to do more outreach with some specific offerings to our nonprofit partners in the community. So, for example, we reached out to our local homeless shelter, and from there we have had multiple individuals who previously were homeless who have participated in the program. We had our public housing authority partners who promoted the program to the local public housing communities, and we had several referrals from that outreach initiative. We ended up touching base with almost all the folks in the nonprofit community and publicizing sort of weekly orientation sessions where our staff person would sometimes go out to the nonprofit to do presentations about Goodwill's programming, and then specifically the Virginia Western partnership. And so all of that was, I think, very instrumental in not only building our partnerships with the
Uh-oh, sounds like we may have lost Mary Ann. So Mary Ann, we're not able to hear you right now. So I'm going to ask another question since we seem to have temporarily lost Mary Ann. So,
hey, Bill, this is Tara. Can I expand on something real quick?
Sure. Go ahead,
I know you're
Tara.
over time, but I just wanted to go back to the question about the internal systems with employers. I do want to mention that we are currently in discussion with Goodwill to do non-credit internships, which is not something that they have done before. Usually they do credit internships. And so there is a very intense internal discussion about what the non-credit internship would look like. And then they also, our program has evolved to do from Microsoft Office training to billing and coding. And so their ICD-10 is new, and usually the hospital requires you to have a CPCA before they will hire you, but because this ICD-10 is so new, they are currently looking to revisit their language, and instead of requiring that CPCA upon hire, to require it within 6 months of hire, as long as you have successfully completed a program of study and billing and coding. So those are two internal systematic changes that are currently going on that I think are pretty significant, especially since Corona is our largest employer, and they could probably lead the way on some of these other things for healthcare providers. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and I think that some of the examples you've given about employer changes come about after investing in those stakeholder relationships and after employers build confidence in the program by meeting staff and meeting some of the students. So it takes an awful lot of time to build those out. I know that you've worked really diligently for 2 years straight to build those out, Tara. So before I'm going to ask Marilyn to answer a question here. So we have a grant that got this thing started and paid a good chunk of the cost of this program for 3 years. That grant, the DOL TAC grant that got this joint program started, ends in March 2016. So Marilyn, can you tell us a little bit about what's going to happen and what your sustainability plans are?
That's a great question, Bill, and hopefully Mary Ann will be able to get back on the line to follow up with this, because she has some pretty exciting news to share about that. One of the challenges, of course, is this is non-credit training, so the students have not been eligible for Pell funding, and so we are looking for other opportunities to provide funding for non-credit training, and our educational foundation has developed a scholarship for non-credit training, so that's one means to provide funding. We have some other grants that we've been able to tap into to continue the training, And in the Virginia Community College system, there's actually a legislative effort underway in this legislative session to provide additional funding for workforce development services and non-credit training. And our college is actually involved in a pilot program right now and has received some funding for non-credit training. That being said, we've also had the opportunity at Goodwill to expand some other programs there. In addition to the Microsoft Office training, which has really been funded through this grant, we've also been able to offer non-credit industrial maintenance training at Goodwill. So we continue to expand our programming there. And Goodwill has just received, I guess I'll let the cat out of the bag if that's okay.
Please, Marilyn.
A huge HRSA grant. It's called the Health Profession Opportunity Grant, HPOG grant. And I believe only there may have been 5 awards in the country, and Goodwill received that grant. And it's a grant that will be lasting at least 4 years. And I think what's really exciting is Tara Alatori, who has been our project director for our current grant, and our current grant will be really wrapping up the end of March, has just accepted employment starting January 5th with Goodwill to be the project director for this huge grant. And with this grant, we'll be able to continue to provide healthcare-related programming at Goodwill. So that really, in essence, is our sustainability. So one good thing has actually led to another great opportunity.
So thanks for sharing that. In Mary Ann's absence, Marilyn, about your multi-pronged sustainability strategy, especially the news about the multi-million-dollar 4-year HPOG grant, which will take this program.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's Mary Ann, Bill. I'm sorry. I don't know why my phone cut off, but I joined Tara.
We just gave them the news about the HPOG grant that will now take this program model started in Roanoke, and under that will expand it to, I believe, 6 other communities, along with those partner community colleges in Western Virginia. Did I get that about right, Mary Ann?
Sure did. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we're excited about the way this partnership has really formed the foundational model for that grant.
Yep. So we got two quick questions that came in before I turn it back over to Meredith to ask a final question and to do some wrap stuff. So one question was about, do Virginia community colleges have to track non-credit students and courses? Having worked in the VCCS system a few years ago, I can say the answer is absolutely yes. They track enrollment and courses, and then, of course, under the TAC grant, you track a lot of other outcomes as well for these non-credit offerings. And then we have another question that came in from Stacy around the retention and success rate. What strategies you use to motivate students to complete the program. Tara, can you talk a little bit around how you guys build the peer community so much so that the students we interviewed talked about this community college Goodwill Partnership program as if it were a family? Can you just tell us what you do there?
Well, that is very much true. I think one of the things that really helps motivate the students is that feeling of family. One, each cohort has supported each other. They come in and they don't realize that a lot of them are probably facing the same challenges, looking for employment, haven't been in school for quite some time, if at all. And here they are going through a very quick and intense and rigorous program together. So that kind of helps build that environment inside the classroom. We selected teachers to teach our classes, and we were very intentional about those selections because we really wanted them to do more than just teach our classes. We wanted them to connect with our students and to really give them that extra attention and to build those relationships because we knew that we were going to be serving a population that needed somebody in their corner. and needed somebody to just really understand what was going on in their lives, and that they are coming through, through so many challenges, but yet they need this training in order to get out of their situations, to grow from where they're currently at. And then, the relationship they had with me and Alicia, and they still have, 2-3 years later, I still have the students connecting and reaching out to us, and, we have lunch with them on the occasion that we're available to do that. But, we encourage them to enroll because, one, it was short-term, and really in just 14 or 16 weeks, we can help you overcome a lot of those barriers that might be in place, transportation, child care, or whatever, to at least get you in here for 16 weeks. And we support them and just encourage them. I mean, a lot of people come in, or a lot of people don't have those support systems. They don't have, maybe a parent or a spouse, who's holding their hand along the way. And it's a very scary path, and so we hold their hand. And, tell them that they can achieve and they will be successful. And, I tell them in the interview process before we put them into the program, as long as you're in this game with me, I'm right there with you, and I'm going to be right beside you. And Leisha and I are very strong advocates for our students. We advocate for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, I think that also helps the students to know that, we truly care about them. They're not just another outcome for us. They're not just another number. They are somebody whose lives we're affecting. And so that's the environment that we want to establish and create, and that seems to be successful for the students.
Well, I know that success rates in completing the program are somewhere in the 90% range, so it seems to be working, Tara. At this point, I am going to turn it over back to Meredith Hatch to ask a closing question of our speakers. And Meredith?
All right. Thank you so much, Bill. So I have a wrap question for each of our panelists. And the question is, what is the one top learning lesson that you can recommend to someone in a role similar to yours? And this is specifically about building effective partnerships. And so I'm going to have Mary Ann respond to this question first. And Mary Ann, if you could also remind us of your role.
Sure, Meredith. I am the Vice President of Workforce Development here at Goodwill, and that means I oversee all of our workforce development programming. And, what I would say about building these types of partnerships is Rome wasn't built in a day. And so I think you just have to start having the conversations, community-based organizations and the community colleges and other stakeholders to figure out where are areas of mission or vision alignment, and then build opportunity from there. So, we had very similar missions, and we looked for places to start where we thought we could have a good chance of success, and then progressively over several years built on each one of those successes and grew the partnership and learned lessons from what worked and what didn't. So start the conversation, ask your leaders to start the conversation, and then look for those first opportunities that could create a high level of success for both partners invested in the process.
Starting the conversation and then building from areas of strength. And so next, I'd like to ask the same question of Tara Alatorre. So what is the one top learning lesson you can recommend to someone in a role similar to yours?
I would think to not be afraid to try new things, step outside that comfort zone. And in regards to partnerships, get off the island. If we can just swim together and work together. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I thought somebody beeped in. But, you know, not to be afraid to have those conversations, try new things, and, you know, step outside your role just a little bit and see if there's a way that you guys can work together and synergize those same things that you might be doing individually.
Really joining together and doing something new. And so, Marilyn, you have the last word. What is the top learning lesson that you would recommend to someone in
Oh, Meredith, I thought of a variety of terms. Mary Ann already touched on this, as did Tara, you know, that patience and perseverance. Hang in there. I think ultimately you have to be consistent. Say what you're going to do and then go and execute it. It's really about the results. Results, but being consistent and having that mission really as your roadmap. And if you have that mission and if you're consistent and the other, you know, verbs that we use, the patience and persistence, you will be successful. I think every community has its gifts and its strengths. I think here in Roanoke, we've proven that. You know, we stood up a program in a very short period of time. We said what we said we were going to do. We were persistent. We were patient. We tried to understand each other's languages because, frankly, some of the verbiage we use here in higher ed is different from a community-based organization. So learning the language, using diagrams, you know, we use the logic model and other tools to help navigate the communication where there are differences. And I think lastly, just go out and do it. You can do it.
That's great advice, Marilyn. Just go out and do it. And so thank you all so much. A few thoughts as we go into our final slide and webinar. So just to thank all of our speakers for sharing about how they can build that strategic vision, build trust, and that's what's really cool there is the consistent finding organizational roles, all organizational. There's some tools that can be used to help staffing checklists. Visions clear and not only really expanding the stakeholder that can support success and also support sustainability and scale and growing up. So in terms of next steps, so students Achieving the Dream and the Aspen Institute will have 3 new promising practices reports in addition to this case study. We hope that you all get a chance to see the case study if you haven't already, and will be. We also have a brief survey at the end of today's webinar, and so wanted to make sure that you had a chance to respond to that. We would love your feedback on how we did, and we give you a chance to really ask some questions as well if you have any follow-up questions. And finally, you will receive a set of the webinar slides, a link to the recording, and recommended resources in a follow-up email tomorrow so that you can share that with your colleagues or others